Wait.
Filmmakers, writers, actors, creators, entertainers, and players. We all have a unique story. This talk show hopes to unearth a few hidden stories and inspire new ones. I'm Nikhil, an engineer who found his calling in the creative space, and I believe each of us has a unique, fascinating, unrepeatable, and unpredictable journey.
So I've got Tony Sears with me. So I was looking up on Tony's IMDb page. So it says actor, it says art department, it says director. Uh, One more thing, a producer as well. Some producer credits also I saw. One thing I'd like to add is teacher because he taught me acting, and it was really like a fun time for me, and lots to learn in that small period of time. So thank you so much, Tony, for coming on this video chat. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure.
Without bureaucracy or red tape can be mutually beneficial.
Always wondered what Lamar saw in you when he tapped you for mayor, but I get it now. You recognize opportunity. I like that.
Good. Well, I look forward to working with you like you worked with him.
Oh, of course, I never really dealt with Lamar directly. I really worked with his daughter. Should I say your former sister-in-law?
Mr. Kent and I were just up here visiting, and
Well, it's gratifying to see practicing lawyers volunteering their time.
I'm happy to do it.
And I'm happy to accelerate these proceedings. We'll start this afternoon.
Yeah. So Tony, I wanted to know about how did you get interested in the film business, in acting, in the creative arts? How did that happen? If I can just take you back a few years.
You'll probably take me all the way back to childhood. Yeah. When I was very young, I was born in South Carolina, and we lived very far out in the country, so there was nothing around. We had a few neighbors, and the neighbor kids were all my age, so we'd get together and play during the afternoon, and we were always watching television with our parents, and then the next day we would act out the things that we had seen on television. And one of the programs that in fact, the first television program I ever remember watching as a child was an episode of Star Trek, the original series. And so we would all watch this show, and then the next day I would be somebody and somebody would be Captain Kirk, and we'd all act out the episode. And I never dreamed that many years later I would be working in the art department for one of the Star Trek series.
Yeah.
But it was an interesting way to come full circle. So I guess it really started when I was a child, and with an active imagination, which is of course the actor's greatest tool. And then later, when I was in high school, I was in the drama department and doing plays in high school, and I went on to college, and my parents wanted me to be a doctor, and I was good in science, and I thought, well, I'll study pre-medicine and then medicine. But I got to college and I auditioned for a play, and I got cast in the play, and then I stopped going to my biology classes because I was always in the theater rehearsing, and so medicine fell by the wayside and I focused on acting. And then years later, after I was out of college and working in the theater, somebody came into town making a movie, and they hired me to be in the movie. And I started to meet people from Hollywood, and they kept saying, "When are you moving to Los Angeles? When are you moving to Los Angeles?" So eventually in 1989.
Sorry, Tony, I think I missed something. So after college and when you landed up in a movie, how did that happen? Did you actively pursue it? Did you seek, or how did that cross over that bridge?
Well, it was a funny story. I was working in the theater on the coast of South Carolina, a little island called Hilton Head Island, and it's very near Savannah, Georgia. And Savannah was at that time becoming a location for the film industry. And there was a movie called The Return of Swamp Thing that was filming in Savannah, and I happened to be in the office in the theater, and there was an actor from New York who was in the play that I was in. And the phone call came in, and they wanted to speak with this guy because they wanted to book an appointment for him to audition for the movie. So I was on the line, and I said, well, would you mind if I came and auditioned as well? And they said, sure, come on and audition for the same role. They faxed us. In those days, we had fax machines. They faxed us the sides for the script, and we went over to audition for the movie. And we both went into audition, and I got the part and he didn't.
I'm sure he must have been delighted when that happened.
Maybe not, but that was my entree into the film business, and that job got me my SAG card, and from there I was able to move up the ladder, as they say.
Just for the Indian audience, SAG is basically your Screen Actors Guild?
Screen Actors Guild. It's the union for actors, and you must be a member of the Screen Actors Guild in order to audition and be in film and television.
So you landed in that particular role. Then how did it go from there? Did you actively pursue, go in for auditions, get into the business completely?
After that role, it came to a grinding halt. I went to Los Angeles and thought that I would just keep going because I'd already been working in theater, and I'd done some film and even some television and radio in the Southeast. But when I got to Hollywood, I realized that there were probably 100,000 people like me who all wanted to get a job. And so all of the doors were just closed.
Right.
And at that point, I couldn't get an agent. I couldn't even get an appointment with an agent. I was very young. I was 24, 25. So I went into film production, and I started working in production. And I started off as a production assistant, and then became an art department coordinator. And for about 10 years, I did that. Until I was working on Star Trek Voyager as an art department coordinator, and I was organizing all of these really terrific creative people who were designing sets and designing graphics, and I wasn't being creative, I was organizing. So I finally decided I had to return to my creative side, and I stopped working in production. At this point, I had been studying acting for a few years, so I had a better idea what I was doing. And I was able to get an agent, and started auditioning, and started getting jobs. And they were small at first, 1 line, 2 lines, and then you move up. So
once you're 10 years into one particular field, a transition is always tough because
yes.
You get comfortable with it. At least there is some level of stability. People know you. You're established to a certain degree. So how difficult was that shift for you?
Well, in television, you have a season, and when the season is over, you take a break. It's called a hiatus. And so we were coming up to that. And I thought, maybe now is the time, because we would be off for 3 months. And I thought, maybe this is the time to make the transition. So I told my boss that I wouldn't be coming back, that I wanted to go back to acting. And it was difficult at first because I didn't really know how to do that. Having spent 10 years in production, I had sort of forgotten my actor self a bit. So just as a way to be creative, I picked up my camera and started shooting photography. And photography became my survival job while I was waiting for a break in the acting business. So I had something to fall back on for an income that was creative. And then, eventually I did get the agent, and I did start auditioning, and I kept studying. I studied for probably 20 years, every week. There was a famous acting teacher in America named Sandy Meisner, and he said it takes 20 years to make an actor. And I think he's probably right. It took about 20 years of studying and actively working every week in class for me to really feel comfortable with my approach and what I was doing when I received a piece of material and had to bring it to life.
Right. So I was looking at your list of creds, and one show was a blast from my past is Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I was so surprised that you've acted.
One of my first jobs.
Oh, that's amazing. So in terms of all the jobs that you've done, acting jobs, which are the ones that you really cherish, and why do you love those roles as an actor?
Well, there's probably two answers to that question. Certainly, all of the work, and I did a lot of work on stage when I was young, and directing for the stage. And there's nothing like that. Being on stage live in front of an audience is really an amazing thing. So all of that body of work that I did really is near and dear to me. As far as film and television roles, one of the proudest moments was being cast in Black Panther, because it was such an important movie and such a big movie, and historically such a significant movie for African Americans and in the superhero world. And so I was, even though it was a very small role in the closing credits, I was very proud of that moment. As far as television goes, I did a season playing a doctor on a show called Army Wives, and it was a recurring role, so it was a chance to sort of grow as a character and be a part of, integrated into the series. Most of the time, actors, unless you're a lead on a series or a regular on a series, you're just coming in to guest star for one episode, and you don't really know all the backstory, or you don't really get to know the actors, or they don't really get to know you. And so it can, even though it's, it's a job and it's fun, it's not as rewarding as having sort of an arc and a storyline.
It's not good news. Your left kidney is shut down. Your right's functioning at 10%.
What now?
We begin hemodialysis 3 times a week. But right now, our priority is to stabilize Claudia Joy. When you get your strength back, we'll go over the transplant process in detail.
Can't her kidneys get better?
I'm afraid not. Her condition's irreversible.
When a movie is made, now it may have a moral standpoint. It may be trying to make a point, trying to change society, or there are some creatives who believe that's an add-on which may or may not happen, but the primary intent is to tell a story, or to entertain, to engage. How important do you think is that factor for you?
I think it's very important. I think as artists, and I think we should consider ourselves artists, actors should, writers, directors. I think we have something that's inherent in us that wants to come out, a statement to make. We have our artistic statement to make. So I think we should approach everything we do with, what story do I want to tell? What do I want to say with this piece of material, or this role, or this piece of directing? And, the writer has already created what they want to say in the words and in the script, but we can also bring our point of view to it and also make a statement. And I think it's an important opportunity to make the world a better place. That's not to say that, everything has to be touchy-feely and feel good. And, I love horror movies and comedies and, all sorts of material. So it doesn't always have to have a message, but I think it does need to make the world a better place, maybe. I don't know.
I feel, yeah. Even a horror film can have like a subtext of maybe a relationship. There can be something that it's saying beyond the story, which can touch the human fabric, I feel.
I agree. We have the opportunity to say something with our entertainment, so why not take it?
I would want to know in this huge span of 4 decades, if you could share with me any person or any incident which has, influenced you.
When I was working on Star Trek Voyager, I went down to the stage one day, and we had a regular director who directed every 2 or 3, 4 episodes. And I walked up to him one morning and I said, "How are you, Alex?" And he said, "I'm great." And then he paused and he said, "I don't have any other choice. Everybody else is looking to me." And I thought that's a good lesson, because it's true. I've seen directors come onto the set in a bad mood, and right away the whole energy gets weird, and then the day doesn't go so well. So the director, has to get along with people and be able to communicate what their vision is, so that the other people who are working around him can help bring that vision to life, including the actors.
How long is all of this going to take?
It could take several days.
Is there no way you can move this along, Mr. Gilchrist? I want to take my brother home.
The consulate will try to expedite this as much as we can, Mr. Ewing.
I think right away when I was very young and in college, my head of my college theater department was a brilliant man. In fact, I think he had a degree in physics. And a lot of what he taught me about acting had to do with energy and the exchange of energy and the physics of acting, which is what I called my acting workshop. He also was had a career in the circus when he was young. So everything was very physical. And he made a big impression on me about the physicality in acting and about the exchange of energy that takes place between actors on stage. So that was certainly one of the first influences on my career. The second was when I graduated college and I worked in a theater on Hilton Head Island, and there was a salty old theater director who ran the place, and I spent a lot of time with him. We'd go to lunch, and he was always smoking a cigarette and drinking coffee. And he said to me once, what you really need to know about acting is, if you're going to take a role, you need to know what's he like and where's the door. And in many ways, he was right about that. We overcomplicate acting, and he tried to simplify it for everybody. And so that was a big lesson for me too. Don't get too much in your head. Just go for it.
Yeah, continuing from there, for you, why do you think you chose acting? What is it that drew you towards acting and pursuing that?
It's a good question. I don't think I've ever really figured that out. It somehow was just in my blood. And one of my high school teachers, my drama teacher, once she saw me getting ready for the play that we were doing and putting on the makeup and the costume, she was like, "You're hooked." And she was right, I was. There was something about putting on the clothes and the hat and the shoes and walking out onto the stage and becoming somebody else and creating this reality that was like a hybrid reality that was very, very exciting and very attractive. And I guess I was hooked.
So would you say that you enjoy acting on stage more than acting for film, or are they two different experiences?
They're two different experiences entirely. Acting for film is much more technical. On the one hand, there's a lot that you have to learn about hitting your marks and being in focus for the camera and being in frame and being in the light and holding your head at the right angle for the other actor in the camera. There's a lot of technical things that you learn little by little over the years, and you learn it from experience by being in front of a camera. And then you have to let all of that go and just hang out with the other actor as if none of that's there, and create this reality, this exchange of energy between the two of you that seems spontaneous and unrehearsed. And that's a challenge I really enjoy. And once you've gotten all of the technical stuff out of your head and you can really just hang out, then it's like being on stage when you're just hanging out with the other actor and you really can't see the audience because the lights are in your face and it's been very well rehearsed. And so there are similarities, but there's a lot of technical.
So I'm going to have a quick game with you. It's called Guess the Director. I think the name is a giveaway. Nothing complicated there. So I'm going to start with the easiest of the lot, The Godfather.
Martin Scorsese.
That is incorrect. I'll give you one more guess.
Oh shit, you're right, it is incorrect. And his name just flew right out of my head.
Bearded guy, big specs.
Yeah, he makes the wine. Coppola. Francis Ford Coppola.
Yes. Okay.
I said Scorsese because of the thing that came out last year, because it just popped into my head.
Which one was that?
The big gangster movie that all the big actors were in.
On Netflix, right?
Yeah.
How can I forget? Oh, anyway.
Okay, now I don't feel so bad.
I've got a bad memory, yes. Okay, Casablanca.
Casablanca with Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall.
His a famous basketball player has the same name, first name.
I don't know any directors named Magic. Pass on that one.
Okay, I'll come back to it. Citizen Kane.
Orson Welles.
That is correct.
By the way, Casablanca is one of my favorite films, so I should know that.
Yes. Schindler's List.
Steven Spielberg.
That is correct. Lawrence of Arabia. The first name is a famous biblical character.
I don't know any directors named Moses either.
No, it's not Moses.
I'm going to pass on that one.
Okay, Gone with the Wind.
Oh, Gone with the Wind. Selwick? No.
Okay, I'll give you a clue. Wizard of Oz and Gone with the Wind are directed by the same director. Wizard of Oz.
Vincent Minnelli? No. Who directed Wizard of Oz?
Victor Fleming.
Victor Fleming. Thank you.
Okay, this is an easy one. City Lights. The greatest comic of all time.
We might have a differing opinion on who that
Yeah,
is.
but arguably. Charlie Chaplin.
Charlie Chaplin directed City Lights.
Yes.
Well, you're right. He was the greatest of all time. I
Alien.
agree. Alien. It just went right out of my head. Alien. Not James Cameron. Wait.
It is not a riddle, I must say.
Ridley Scott.
Yes. Whom did we miss? Lawrence of Arabia? We missed that, right?
Yeah,
The short, David
Finch? No.
Lean.
David Lean. Okay.
Yeah. Casablanca, first name is Michael. Michael Curtis. I don't know him too well.
I didn't know that.
Oh, okay. So I think you've got a few in there. Not
Well,
bad.
I think I failed miserably on that one.
No problem. In terms of directors, who is your favorite director of all time and why?
Well, it might be Mike Lee, because of his the way he works with actors and improvs and gets such raw, wonderful performances. He creates a script with his actors in improvisational rehearsals, but the performances are unbelievable.
So he does not have a script at all, or does he have like a structure in place?
Well, he writes the script based on the improvisations.
Oh, okay.
So they start off with nothing except an idea, and then he builds the script from the rehearsals that they do. And it's a very interesting result that he achieves. The films are really quite interesting. Also, Spike Lee.
Are they related? No.
Nope. I tend to like directors who don't do these big blockbuster things. I mean, I love Francis Ford Coppola. I love Martin Scorsese. I love some of those guys. But some of these big blockbuster films, I think the direction is not like it is with these smaller, more story-oriented films. Although I must say, Steven Spielberg is one of the films that made the biggest impact on me was by Spielberg, and it was called The Color Purple. And I think that was a beautifully done film in every way.
Oprah was there, no? I think.
Yes, Oprah Winfrey and Whoopi Goldberg.
Right.
And Danny Glover. It was a very inspiring film for me as a young actor in college. I still remember sitting in the movie theater and watching that film and being so impacted by that film.
Sure. So, and in terms of actors?
I think Meryl Streep, hands down, is maybe the best actor that we have ever produced in this country. She's quite extraordinary in everything she ever does. She just has a magic, a gift of just inhabiting the character and bringing it to life in a way that that most actors can't even touch.
Since you've been 40 years in the business, what would you maybe tell your younger self when you were starting out?
There's a lot I'd like to tell my younger self if I were starting again. But if I were going to give any advice to a young actor today, I think it would be to learn your craft as well as you can, study with a good teacher, but trust yourself. A good teacher can give you some feedback and some criticism, but the teacher is not going to be able to give you a process. You're going to have to figure that out for yourself. So start early, start figuring out what works for you, how to be honest, how to really exchange that energy with another actor. And then keep up the practice, keep up the work. If I have one criticism about actors in general, it's that they're lazy. And actors can't be lazy. We have to always be working and always be looking and searching and trying things, taking risks. And I think if I had one thing to say to myself as a young actor, it would be take more risks. That's one of the reasons I think Meryl Streep is so impactful on me as an actor, is because with everything she does, she takes a risk. She's not afraid to let any emotion or any impulse go by. She doesn't let them go by. She follows them and she sees where they go, and she does it with the other actor and responding to the other actor, and it's a beautiful thing to watch, and it gets into the energy of the performance, and it penetrates, I think, into the audience in a way that an actor just saying the words and doing a sort of shallow performance doesn't happen.
It was a fun chat I could have with you, Tony.
It was very nice to chat with you.